It's on a piece of property that the township already owns. Right now, it's home to the Welcome Center, and also there's a kitchen in there that where meals for seniors are being prepared. So I'd like to just give a very brief account of how we got to this place and how we decided that this is what we wanted to do. Community. I started as mayor about a year and almost 3 months ago. And one of the CDBG projects that was unfinished, and CDBG stands for Community Development Block Grant. We get, varies year to year, but we get about somewhere between 1.3 and 1.7 million dollars to spend in low to moderate income areas according to our census. So we're operating right now off of the 2010 census, but those projects are listed, line by line. And I saw an unfinished project which called for a study for an elevator to be put on a boxing gym. And when I looked into it, the boxing gym is part of a building that doesn't belong to the township. It was a very well-regarded and renowned boxing club at one point. The building sits behind one of our firehouses off of Westchester Pike, kind of across from the police building. And about a year ago, CAO Vincent Rangioni and myself visited the boxing club just to look at it, and it's kind of great. It has a lot of history. There was a lot of good programming that was done through that, and in conjunction with the PAL program. It had a really cool parquet floor, which had been kind of wrecked in an accident involving water, maybe 3 or 4 years prior to that. And there's weights, there's an actual, what do you call it? A boxing ring. I'm not a boxer, so you a little bit here. Anyhow, I thought, wow, we don't own this building. Why are we spending money on putting an elevator there? It's a really tight spot, doesn't have a lot of great parking. But the concept of the boxing gym was great. And after CAO Vincent Rangioni and I visited it, we looked at some of the other properties that the township does own. And we thought, well, instead of having a feasibility study for an elevator on a property that we don't own, why don't we look at redeveloping a property that we do own? So a couple blocks up from the former boxing gym is the Welcome Center. And it's a one-story building, and you'll see it later in the presentation. And I thought, well, this could be a really great opportunity for us to reinvest in the community and bring a resource there that doesn't exist now. So we don't, at this point, we don't have a community center. And it kind of went from there. We had to do a little bit of, we had to advertise that we were changing that line item on the CDBG budget, but we really believe, and when I say we, it's like the leadership team of Darby Township, and it may or may not have been my idea, but we believe in reinvesting in the community. We want to redevelop our business districts, and this could also be part of reforming our leisure services department. So we think this could be a really great thing for our community, a real signal that things are forward-looking, and I hope, look forward to any input that you have as to programming or design. And I'm going to hand it over to Joseph Powell. He's from BKP Architects, and BKP was the firm that won the bid, because we did put it out for bid for this feasibility study. So Joseph, if you could take it from here, that would be great.
All right, well, thanks, Mayor Keffer. I appreciate that. Before I get started, I wanted to introduce the rest of the folks that are from our team that are here to help me give this presentation tonight. From my office, I have Bridget Kelly, who's working with us. And then from Viridian Landscape Studio, I have Tavis Dockwiller and Leah Grosso. And from Milliard Design, which are civil engineers and water management engineers, I have Michelle Adams and Elise Egger-Crow. At various times over the course of this presentation, they'll chime in and help me get things right with what we're proposing to do here. Now, before we go further, I'm going to stop my video so that it's easier to pay attention to the screen. So again, thanks to everyone for coming. I echo the mayor's sentiment there. I appreciate the interest. Unfortunately, with COVID, we're a little out of practice doing these kinds of presentations, and then you have the double whammy of doing it over Zoom. So hopefully this goes smoothly. So first, I wanted to set the context of 7,000 Walnut Street, basically where it is within the township and what this property looks like. Now, I won't linger on these because I'm sure a lot of folks that are on this presentation know where it is and what it looks like, but I'll just take us up for a walk around the building that's there now. So this is a general view of the northwest corner. Then I have a straight on view of the north. You can see it's from this side, it's a one-story building, but as you go around to the south side, it becomes 2 stories. Another corner view, you can see the residential neighborhood that this building sits in. Across the street, we have the big old parking garage, which it's there, and you can see it takes up the entire block across the street. And we have a quick view of the northeast corner, the entrance to the Welcome Center that's there now. And a shot to the east, as you can see the site starting to slope away. You see the residential, 2-story residential neighborhood around the project site. The alley that's to the back, the south side, and you can see the neighboring property's fence. And the corner of the southwest, where again, you can see the property starts to fall away. I want to get back to the site in its context, and we always like to put together a little walking map. You can see how far you can get, basically half a mile, a mile and a half, somewhere between 15, 30, 45-minute walks. So next slide here really zooms in on that half hour, 10 to 15-minute walk. And you can see that within this neighborhood, in addition to the hundreds of houses that are here, there are a lot of community support things. There's a lot of religious institutions. The municipal building is within a 10-minute walk. The free library is within a 10-minute walk. The Tower Theater, a couple of other recreation spaces, a couple of schools. So the idea, and really what this means to us and what this means to the project, is that this is a community-based facility, and it's meant to be one that can be walked to. It's not a regional destination facility, as we'll see when we get into where we're going. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about the proposed project, and basically what we're trying to do as an overview. I'll give you an overview. What we're trying to do is a very sustainable, a very flexible community asset. It's a very interesting site. You can see it's got very strange configurations between the way the Maypole and Wilshire kind of angle off of Walnut Street. And you saw in the photographs, the alley in the back, you saw that it's got that strange parking garage across the street, but then it's surrounded by residential, very modest 2-story construction. So basically it was a quick overview of what we're going to try to put into this. We will put into this facility a very flexible multi-purpose space. On this slide, you're seeing it could possibly configured for half-court basketball. The components that won't physically change but could be very flexible in their use are a large multi-purpose meeting room, which you can see on the left side, and then 2 small multi-purpose rooms, which could be configured for arts and crafts. They could be configured for computer classes, for lots of things that could go on in these spaces adjacent to the main entrance. And I'll get to this site development and I get to the last slide. I want to just show you how flexible this can be. This is another configuration that same space could be used for volleyball. And then also, as the mayor was alluding to, that same space could repurpose and become the space for the boxing gym. What I'd like to do is get Tavis and Leah to take walk you through what we're thinking on this ground plane in terms of how, our entry experience and our stormwater management proposals.
Okay, hi, this is Tavis, and we are very interested in making sure that the exterior spaces offer welcoming spaces to the community and spaces that really make little parklets. So you can see that at the main entrance on the top left of the slide, there is both a set of steps and an accessible ramp to come up into a series of two-tiered spaces. We are thinking right now about having some play elements and then also some gathering elements. You see the tables and chairs adjacent to the main entrance. And we also want to collect stormwater off of the roof and the surrounding pavement and show green methods for treating it. We know that you have a huge amount of impervious surfaces in Upper Darby, and we want to show ways that you can actually return the groundwater into the ground, or return the rainwater into the ground and make it cleaner and better for the environment. We're also showing some street side parking that would be available for the gym. You see on Walnut Street, Wiltshire, the alley, and Maypole Road. So we want to make sure that there's an easy way to access this, even though we know lots of people will walk here. We also on Walnut Street are providing a lay-by so that people can pause, drop things off, or people could be dropped off for programming. We want to give a convenient way for people to be able to access the building when they don't have to stay a long time. Unless I missed anything, back to you, Joe.
All right, thanks. We'll go to the second level. Here we've created a mezzanine space overlooking the very flexible multi-purpose space below. Part of the reason we've done that is if we do basketball here, we need a certain height for it to function properly. But it also creates a place for informal gatherings, for things to happen, for kids or for adults to gather and talk. It's not shown with furniture populated in it yet, but the idea is that it would be a very informal place for people to do things that can happen spontaneously. The other big feature that we're creating here is on top of the one-story entry space and multi-purpose room spaces, we're creating a working or a teaching garden. And then I'll flip it back to Tavis for this.
And these spaces are our preliminary vision for the spaces. I'm sure over the iteration of the project, things will get refined. But right now, what we're thinking is that there will be permanent plantings, which are shown on the left. And then you see those rectangles, and those could be community gardens. So real food could be produced here on this terrace. The brown rectangles or beige rectangles will be storage for the garden. And we've even talked about having bees up here to make sure that we have our pollinators.
And then I'll take it back now and take us to the pièce de résistance. The best part of the project is a very interesting and very great idea that came from your township folks to have a community meeting space / garden on the upper level on the roof of the multipurpose room at this corner in this location because, well, two reasons. One, it's a need for the community. And two, there's a wonderful view back over Upper Darby, the edges of the township and toward the city of Philadelphia from this place, from this location. We're at the top of a hill or almost at the top of a hill here. And the land falls away towards the creek and then toward the city beyond. So what we're doing here is creating a space to have, again, as we're saying, multi-purpose, any kinds of meetings or events or fundraisers or anything that you could think of could happen up in this space. And then we have an indoor part in case there's any, we'll have a shaded space a shaded portion for it, and then an indoor space, a pre-function, so that there's various degrees of enclosure. Tavis or Leah, if there's anything up here you'd like to focus on?
Sure. We're thinking that this space, as you said, can be used for events, but it can also be, we're trying to be very careful to design this so that it can be used for everyday function as well. So you won't feel like you're just going to go out onto a big terrace, but it'll feel like a place where you can go up and read a book, take in the view. You see the circular area on the left. We're thinking about some sort of a council ring or fire pit. So we're trying to really create outdoor rooms that are very versatile for your community, and you can use them both on a casual day-to-day casually day-to-day, and you can also use them for more formal events.
Yeah, as Tavis was alluding to, we're trying to be as flexible as possible with all the things we're doing, but we're also not making it so flexible that it looks just, it's just an open space with a couple of things here and there. I mean, we are, as she's saying, with the council ring, trying to make some very specific moves, but the specific moves spin off into things that are much more functional and flexible. Again, we're really trying to make this a sustainable feature, building in the community, set the standard for moving and looking forward, as the mayor had mentioned. We're trying to really introduce cutting edge or really forward-looking, again, stormwater management techniques, again, because of the impervious pavement problem in the township. We want it to be flexible. We want it to be an asset to the community. The next slide is kind of showing our exuberance for things a little bit and how this thing might start to develop in terms of the colors. And it's a more illustrative plan than the ones we just showed you, but it shows all three of these layers of the outdoor spaces from above and how they do somewhat relate to each other as you would work your way through the building. You remember where you were and where you've been. And I don't know, again, if Tavis or Leah, you have anything you'd like to add to this on this drawing, if we haven't already covered everything?
Well, I think one thing to add is that if we do these public outdoor spaces, these landscapes correctly, these can really become teaching landscapes. They'll be great places to observe the world. They'll be great places to see birds and pollinators at work. Kids can become citizen scientists, and they can look at the difference, for instance, between how plants grow in a roof garden setting versus how they grow on the ground, the types of plants, and those sorts of ways to really engage in a living landscape can be very meaningful for young and old.
And one more, this is what we think this may end up starting to look like. It's a very early rendering. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done to flesh it out and make it real. But now you can start to see in 3 dimensions these things we're showing in plan and how these gardens relate to each other and how the building comes together and how that building sits within its residential landscape. As I mentioned before, the roof, the community space on the roof of the multipurpose room, you can see how above that landscape it is, and the very real very real aspect of looking out over the community and back toward the city from this rendering. And that is the end of what we brought to show you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, good. I was going to say, any questions? We're certainly here to help.
So thank you so much for that excellent presentation. Mayor, was there anything you wanted to say before we open Q&A?
All right, I just wanted to say, I wanted to thank BKP because they had put these renderings together months ago when we applied to get a RACP funding for this project. And we have been awarded $1 million from the state. And I just want to thank our state representatives, Margaret Davidson and Mike Zabel. Senator Carney also wrote a letter of support, and we had support from various community groups, including the the Bywood, BYA, the Bywood, I'm forgetting the thing, and also the Cobbs Creek West Association. So I think that we have a lot of community support, and we have support from our electeds that are at a higher level than us. And we, again, I'd like to thank BKP for putting this together, working with the team from the township to submit the grant and the application and get it started. I mean, $1 million is great, right? That could go a long ways to getting the project off the ground. And maybe we're dreamers, but I kind of like that. You know, I think maybe it's a field of dreams type of thing. If you build it, they will come. Maybe if you draw it, it'll come. Yeah.
Yes.
I believe that this is a good project. Building higher is good for our very built out community. And yeah, we will find the money to get it done. That's how I feel. So are we doing Q&A now? I think that's all I had to say. I don't think, Rangiani, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Tavis and Joe, BKP. I guess just to build on a couple things. I mean, first of all, obviously, I'm Vincent Rangioni, the township's CAO, for anybody at the meeting who might not be familiar. I also want to introduce and thank our township engineer, Mike Galante, who's here. Mike did a lot of work with us and with BKP on this project. And I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but it's important to know that BKP won a competitive bidding process in order to produce these renderings. There were a number of firms, I can't remember, but maybe as many as 20 or 30 who submitted proposals. So it was a very competitive process, and BKP has really put their best foot forward for us the whole time. So I think it's important for the public to know that there was a bidding process that got us here. I guess the things that I want to emphasize, this project, we're in the early stages. We want to get community input. I think a couple of the presenters mentioned these are preliminary ideas for the spaces. We want to hear from the community what you all want out of the center. That's what'll really make it a community center. The part of this that the mayor is providing is the vision and the will and the determination. As she just said, we are determined to go out and find the money to provide this asset for the community and make it what the community wants. One of the things that the mayor would like to do is make it an example, raise the development standards in Upper Darby, hold developers to a higher standard, make them know that the residents of Upper Darby demand and deserve high quality, top end amenities, beautiful, clean, forward looking spaces that we all feel good about. We really, and that's the thing. There was mention of returning the stormwater to the ground. That's something that we need to do, and we need to show other developers. You have to have progressive stormwater management. You have to have green roofs and green spaces. We really want to elevate that design standard, and we want to lead by example. The mayor has said to the staff, we need to go out and lead by example. The best buildings, the most beautiful buildings, the forward-looking things, they have to come from the township, or the developers won't follow. So I wanted to put those thoughts out there for everybody. And yeah, we're excited to take your questions and your input and see what we can put together here.
I see we're already getting some great questions.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Allison Dobbins. I'm the Deputy CAO, and we're going to get started with the question and answer period. We're going to try and get through as many questions as we're able to in the next half hour. So please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A section. We aren't able to monitor both the chat and the Q&A, so please try and use the Q&A function. All right, so let's get started. The first question comes from Peggy W, and she asks, what about a kitchen for cooking and nutrition classes?
Yeah, so I can take that one. I think it's a great idea. I think a teaching kitchen and nutrition classes would dovetail really nicely with the community garden aspect. And it's exactly the kind of thing that we're trying to do in the space. And, I don't want to be sort of stereotypical here, but I mean, everything comes down to dollars and cents and space. So I absolutely think it's a really good idea and could provide a lot of value to the community. We do have a kitchen at the Watkins where we prepare meals. So we just have to think, like, if we want cooking classes and nutrition, is it best at the new community center, or is it best at the Watkins or somewhere else? But I think it's a good idea to put in the hopper here.
And I agree with you 100%, especially when you look at the next question. It does dovetail very nicely with the community garden, the teaching garden up on the first roof.
Yeah, so the next question, and actually just if maybe we could go back to one of the slides that covers that. Raya F asks, what are the anticipated hours for the center? Is there any way to keep the kitchen and combine it with the garden for nutrition and cooking classes? I think we've covered that one. Let's go ahead with Mike L. Is this for residents of Upper Darby Township only?
I would say ideally, yes. And we haven't quite figured out if you're going to join the fitness center, say, do you have to be a resident? Is there a residential, membership level and then a non-resident? This is meant for the people of Upper Darby. So, right. As we go forward with the project, we're going to have to think about the practicalities of administering it, of running it. So right now, as Joseph Powell said earlier, that we're at the very beginning stages, but we're not going to do it back and forth. But I'm not sure if you're asking, like, if you know people that might want to, like,
All right, I'm not sure what happened to the mayor's mic.
I was like, wow, okay.
Bonnie
Anyway,
H.
No, it's an ongoing conversation, but this is a community center for the Upper Darby community. Absolutely.
Okay, so Bonnie H is asking, might you think about making this an all-electric building so that we will be moving forward towards 100% renewable energy in the future?
It is something that we are looking at, yes.
Great. The next question is from Jean K. How large are the meeting rooms and about how many people could meet in that size space? Are there any thoughts to have another level, maybe as a basement, to have more meeting space for classes or groups to meet?
Bridget, do you want to take the first part of that? Because you may have a better handle on the number of people for these rooms. And if not, I can take a stab at it.
So some of the smaller rooms were designed to hold something like a smaller group setting. That was, I would love to double check these numbers, and they were in the ballpark of your like 15 to like low 20s. But the larger room was above 20. I think it was almost 30 people. So we tried to have rooms that could accommodate both your large groups and your smaller groups.
Right. That was my recollection as well. Thank you. So the question about another level. Yes. In fact, Vince has been bugging me about that for months. And he's not wrong, because as I've noted in our setting the context, the site does slope away. I have been conservative about that until we have a really good handle on the dollars, but because, I just don't want to willy-nilly add another floor. But it has come up, and it is something we've talked about, and it's not off the table as we develop this project further.
Great. Speaking of developing this project, Garcia W asks, do we have an idea of timeline for this project?
Yeah, I think some of those things are sort of dependent on how the community input comes back and how the funding flows. But I would imagine, and actually, I mean, Joe or Mike, you might be in a better position being more familiar with the construction arena than I am, but I think a year, 12 to 18 months, something like that.
Well, I think we could probably be ready for bid within 6 or 8 months. And then it
Okay.
probably is a project that would take about a year. At the outside, at the worst, it would take 18 months to build, but I think we could get it built in a year once we have contractors on board. Mike, I don't know if you think anything different.
Yeah. So, next steps would be to go through the design process. There's a process that we need to do to develop improvements to improve transportation. And it dovetails into a later question about parking. But basically, I think 12 to 18 months funding available. I think that's possible to actually get, to some point of construction. But like you said, you got about 6 months of six months of construction docs, and you got about another year of construction. So 18 months would be a very fast time schedule, but the funding would have to be there. And
Right.
that's
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Funding permitting.
Great. The next question comes from Catherine W. What are the plans for parking?
Tavis, you want to hit that one?
Sure. As I said, we have parking on the street still, and we're actually adding some parking in the alley because we're bumping the pavement in. That alley is very narrow now. I mean, maybe people park on it, but it's not conducive to both parking and traffic. And what we've also talked about is a partnership with the parking garage across the street. We do see this, and I'm sure that Vince can speak to this too. I mean, we do see this as a walking resource for the community. So we envision lots of people walking here. And that's why we showed the diagram of it's a 5, 10, 15-minute walk. So I don't know if the township has something to add.
Well, I'll just jump in for a second. Right now, we're showing 8 spots that would be for the public and 2 spots on the alley that we're thinking would be reserved for staff. And these are spots that are, real spots on the street. And then we have the lay-by for drop-offs. And as Tavis said, we really think this will be more geared toward walking. But again, if Mike or Vince have any other comments.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the sort of design elements of it is we want to encourage walking. We want to encourage bike riding, and it's very well located for public transportation. I mean, there's both the L and bus routes that make the site very easily accessible. So yeah, our hope is to focus on those aspects and promote those modes of transportation. And in addition to a possible partnership with the garage, there's also another parking garage sort of around the corner on the other side of 69th Street. So there are a lot of nearby parking options, even though there aren't a lot of parking options on the site itself.
I do think, I'm just reading ahead in the questions. Lots of people are asking about this. This isn't uncommon. There's neighborhood concern about parking. This will be something that we will continue to study throughout the process to make sure we have the best intervention possible to make this a really successful center and make sure, that it's very welcoming to the neighbors.
Yeah, so on the topic of community feedback, the next question comes from Sine P. How best can we share our ideas for the community center and observe the progress on this project? For example, with the community and teaching gardens, it makes sense to have a maker space for not only gardens, but also tools and space for other hands-on projects, small woodworking tools, 3D printing, laser cutters, arts and crafts, fabric crafts.
Yeah, sure. So part of the answer is you just you just did. Right now, this meeting is a perfect way to share your thoughts and ideas. And some of those ideas we've had, and some of them we haven't had yet, but now we're aware of. I think the thing to do is to continue to keep an eye on our Facebook page and our website, and keep an eye out for any other community meetings. There's also you can continue to submit ideas. Actually, let me ask Allison, would the mayor's request line be the best way to continue to submit input, or is there some other email address that would be better to continue to submit input?
I think the best way to submit input would be to email the mayor's office, which would be mayor@upperdarby.org. I think that will be the best way as we move forward to continue to gain that input. Yeah, and keep in mind.
Can we put that into the chat? Could we put that into the chat just in case people don't have it?
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Jada G asks a similar question, which is, has there been planning / consideration for the sort of programs that may be implemented in this beautiful space? I think it may be important to be conceptualizing those things in tandem.
And yes, we are. That's exactly how we're looking at this.
Yeah.
Joe, I'd like to speak to that to a minute.
Sure, go ahead,
We
please.
find that through these processes, programming also evolves. This is the kind of place where you'll think of new things that you haven't imagined. And as you go through the process, they'll kind of, shake out. And you'll find even as it gets opened, you'll see new programs that can evolve. And if the building and the exterior spaces are flexible enough, that can happen. Someone asked about yoga. I could imagine yoga in an indoor room, but I could also imagine yoga on the roof or even in the entry terrace. So I think the programming will flesh out as the process goes, as the building is built, and then as the township's capacity for programming grows.
Absolutely. So the next question comes from Imani H. She asks, thank you all for your time and for having a community forum about this. I appreciate hearing the story behind this. How much money is raised thus far, and how much do you all hope to have for this project?
So
yes, cool. Go ahead.
Well, fill in for me if I miss something, but we have $1 million to start out with. Because it's in a CDBG area, we also have access to budget for that as well. And we do want to concentrate our community development block grant money on above ground projects, as I call them. So Mike Galante is really very adept at finding matching grants. So it doesn't mean that $500,000 of our $1.3 million of CDBG money goes to the center, right? Mike can take a chunk of that and leverage it towards a grant to stretch our dollars. I mean, that's what we're doing. But I like thinking in general, I just like thinking about what do we want? Okay. What's the ideal? And then working down from there. I feel pretty confident, as I said in the beginning, that because Upper Darby and Delaware County in general has so little green space, right? So few parks and community spaces, and Upper Darby absolutely is built out, right? So we do have to build up. And I know that myself and our leadership team in the administration, we all believe that we will find the money. We will make it happen. And we believe it, and we want the community to believe it because we believe in the community. And, we don't have everything right now, but we're going to get it.
Absolutely. And the just a couple little details that I would add there. The mayor is right on. The first $1 million is for the site work, for the initial plans and demo. The total cost of the project is still up in the air, right? We had a question earlier about whether there would be another level with more meeting space, et cetera, area of, I don't know, $5 to $8 million as a total project cost. When it's all said and done, depending on exactly what's in there. The good thing about the $1 million grant that the township already received is when the state gives a grant like that, they tend to like to see the project through to completion. So we do have the opportunity to go back to them for phase 2 and phase 3 funding for the project. So that's one open avenue. And there are lots of other avenues. One other thing that I would point out is these types of state grants, usually a municipality or oftentimes a municipality will partner with a private developer, and the grant money will go into onto private property for the benefit of a private developer. And it's not that the mayor is opposed to that entirely, but it's very clear what she's made a priority for Upper Darby is getting this grant for a public space, for a community asset, not for private development, not for profit motive, but to develop the community. So $5 to $8 million, we can go back to the folks who gave us the first $1 million for some of it. And the mayor says we have to get it done. So we're going to get it done.
All right. So the next question comes from Tim T, and he asks, the green roof space is fabulous. Any thought given to any use of solar panels to power the facility?
Yes, we will be looking at the options of putting panels in places that make sense for both the the efficiency and for ways that we can use it to enhance the design.
Great. Also, now programming related, Geraldine G just notes that she would love to see program brought back to the neighborhood, such as Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. I am sure classes like aerobics and yoga will also be of interest to residents. Councilman Hafiz Tunis asks, how does a community center like this raise property values in the area?
Yeah, so I think the hope, first of all, to the first question about community groups and things, absolutely. That's absolutely the kind of thing that we're trying to spark. And like, how exciting would it be for a local Boy Scout troop to be able to go to a beautiful brand new facility to have their meetings? We just want it to sort of lift everybody's spirits, right? And create enthusiasm for all that kind of stuff. And I think that connects to the councilman's question about property values. If the township sets a new standard for quality, a new standard for development in the neighborhood, we think that homes in the area will be more attractive. I mean, who wouldn't want to raise their kids next to a beautiful community center where they have access to all kinds of amenities and classes and things? So I think it's certainly our hope that the community center will help raise property values significantly in the area.
So more about the features that have been presented. Cynthia W asks, can you speak about safety with the fire pit? How will it be kept safe from a wandering child? Would the township be liable for injury? Will there be first aid stations?
Well, sure. It isn't a fire pit that would constantly be going. It's one idea for a feature. At our office, we've done these lots of ways. We've done these something that can be turned on only for special events with adults present. We've done them as just lighted features that give you the feeling of a fire pit so that there is no actual fire. So it's a great question, and we all have to be concerned about safety with any of the features on site. So we'll definitely make sure that this isn't a dangerous place. We want it to be a fun and exciting place, but not dangerous.
Absolutely. Council President Laura Wentz asks, will the ventilation only bring air into the building instead of the normal of recycling air in the building?
I mean, we're going to be, there's a couple of things that layers to the answer. One is, we'd be meeting fresh air requirements of code. I mean, that's the simple answer. The idea here would be to try to make sure this is, try to do this building according to well building principles as best we can, which include making sure that we have air changes and that the air inside is good air and not recycled and reused air. I understand that part of the question. At this point, I don't have details on how that will be accomplished since we're very early in the process.
Certainly. The next question comes from Lynn R. Could the main space be multi-purpose to allow for film screenings, theater performances, and or large gathering in addition to sports?
Yes, that's absolutely the idea.
Mark M says, great concept, has a combination of active rec and passive. Love the idea of the facility being used as an educational center for young residents to learn about the environment and community. Christine Q asks, with an increase of violence in our township, how will safety be considered?
Yes, so I mean, I think it's a great question for the community in general, not just for the community center itself. And I think it's one of the programmatic elements that we'll have to address. I mean, maybe Tavis and Joe can talk a little bit more about things that they've done on other sites to keep the site secure. But I think I think the hope is that the programming and the community center are a buttress against violence in the community, right? The idea is to give people alternatives to going down the wrong path and getting involved in those sorts of things. Yeah, I think that's a best hope for the project.
This might not be the most PC thing I'm going to say, but just to throw it out there that there's increased violence here is sort of inflammatory. We're really working hard to make things better here, and we do have data. The police department does do monthly reports. We're not building this expecting it to be a fortress against some
right.
undetermined violence that's supposedly happening here. And I know that's maybe an uncomfortable thing to say, but we believe that investment in the community will make a better community. We believe that when we are building something, when we are developing new programming, that people in the community will recognize it as a positive. And we have a great police department. I'm not sure that there's been any sort of escalation in violence. I mean, there's been some that's been in the paper in the last couple of weeks, and those things happen, kind of everywhere. But I think our police department is doing a great job of doing their job, right? They're here to protect us and to serve us. And a big part of this program too is revitalizing the PAL program. Superintendent Bernhardt is totally for what we're doing here as well, because the PAL program has been pretty quiet for the last few years, and we're just about to get a whole new group of officers in the department. They're young, they're the most qualified, most diverse group of officers that has ever come before us in Upper Darby, and they want to be part of this too. So it's I think the programming is going to be good. It's going to be evolving, right? We should keep having these conversations, and I should probably stop talking.
Well, and Joe might have. Well, Joe might have something to say to this too, but I'd like to add on, and I always go back to the work of Bernadette Cozart, who was a gardener and botanist and urban advocate who worked on the greening of Harlem And she said that if you only build fortresses and you don't give people beautiful places, how can they know what beauty is? And if you only give people things that don't break, how can they learn to be careful? So that sometimes sounds very pie in the sky, but that really is the truth. And the idea of having a community center that has a play garden in the front that showcases stormwater and movable furniture and makes a real community place to be will help to make the community come together. And we've seen that happen before. And we already had a discussion about, could we do movable furniture here? And maybe you won't be able to do it on day one, but I'll tell you, we've put movable furniture in some pretty tough places, like on the LaSalle campus, and everyone said all of that would be taken away in the first day by the students, by the residents. And you know what? Everybody loves sitting in those Adirondack chairs. They're bloody heavy, and they don't take them away.
Sure, yep.
All right, we don't have a lot of time left, so let's try and get through a few questions submitted by people who haven't had the chance to ask. Dottie D asks, are you planning on accepting bids from contractors within UDT Township, or will this be any contractors?
I
I
think,
can answer that. Oh,
Go ahead,
good.
Mike.
Mike's, let me just say something, then you
Yeah.
catch whatever I miss. But in general, this is, a lot of this money is going to come from the federal government. It has to be, we do have a responsible contractor ordinance that we're going to adhere to. I don't know if it goes that deep to include like that the company has to be based in the township. But Mike, I think you would be better to answer that. We're responsible contractor ordinance. This is federal, a lot of it's federal money. It's going to be a very safe and well done union job.
Yeah, and just to add on, we have to go through a public bidding process. And, local contractors, we expect local contractors will bid it, which would be contractors in Delaware County, could be a contractor in Upper Darby, could be a contractor in Philadelphia. With the responsible contractor ordinance, we find that they tend to hire local union workers. So you may not have the contractor company stationed in the township, but you'll get you have workers. However, as part of the bidding process, we have to make sure we have to open it up to any and all bidders who are interested, responsible bidders who bid on the project, like any project.
Ed Brown asks, could one of the multi-purpose rooms be used to teach free computer workshops to the community?
Yes, that's actually what we're showing in the drawing, a configuration to do just that.
Brian R asks, have you given thought to installing ecosystem water features such as ponds, water gardens, and streams? I think that's...
Tavis, I think we show them on the drawing.
Sure. Well, we have to consider those features very carefully because some of them can be high maintenance, and we also want to make sure that we tell the story of stormwater in a realistic way. That said, we may be able to find ways to showcase water, real habitat water. I don't know, Michelle or Elise, would you like to add anything to that? I know you're out there. There's Elise.
Sure, I can speak to that a little bit. Yeah, as far as, stormwater management, we really want to make sure that we're, not creating a flooding situation on this site. And, if we can find a great opportunity to either reuse some of that water or create a feature that is maybe a fountain or something that you can kind of sit by and contemplate. That's certainly something that we can incorporate into the project if that's something that, that everybody would like. So I think, that comes we love to hear these ideas because the more we hear the ideas, the more that they can, kind of root themselves in the project as we move forward. And I definitely love the idea of a water feature, just, sitting next to kind of that sound, and getting some of that, that experience while you are in such, a city type environment.
No joking aside, maybe we could recycle some of that storm water in that fountain.
Mhm.
What do you think?
Well, absolutely. There are definitely ways to do that. We usually have to have makeup water for the hot
Right.
months when you don't get as much rain.
As long as
But
nobody drinks it.
and then nobody drinks
Nobody
it.
can drink it.
But if that becomes an important part of the story, and I think that'll be what's really fun about the process, is to flesh out the stories that rise to the top to become the most important features for you.
Okay, Councilman Matt Silva would like to just ask, he says, this looks great. I'm excited about it. What public transit routes are near this center?
I don't know if I have the exact numbers of the routes, but I can go back to the one drawing we made. There's along Marshall Road. There's a bus, but I don't know the number of that. And of course, right, obviously there's the 69th Street Transportation Center relatively close by. It looks like there's a bus route along down 69th Street. It looks like actually there's a stop right on the opposite corner along Walnut, but I don't have the numbers of the routes.
Yeah, we can follow up and get that information out to folks. It's a really good question. And I think not because of this project, but in a parallel track, SEPTA just happens to be working on revamping their bus routes. And so as long as SEPTA is in that process already, we can maybe talk to them about those bus stops that are close. Maybe we can move a bus stop even closer in cooperation with SEPTA. So it's definitely a good question and something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, Councilwoman Michelle Billups just wanted to say, I do not have a question, just a comment. As a resident of Upper Darby, I'm excited about the community center and its possibilities. Amani H asks, will the township be able to maintain this building for this foreseeable future? Are there ideas for how this can generate revenue for the township? Has there been any communication with the school district, SEPTA, communities of faith, etc.? How might other institutional partners use this space?
Yeah, so lots of questions there. The answer to most of them is yes. There has been some engagement already with some of the community groups and the library, SEPTA. We've started a little bit with the school district. I think the idea for the space is if any of those groups, want to use the space to hold a class or a meeting or et cetera, that's sort of what the space is for. So they would be able, to sign up and reserve the space and so on. In terms of generating revenue, I think we're in the early stages of those conversations. The hope would be that some of the programs might have a nominal fee that would help pay for themselves. We're looking at this, I think, as primarily an investment into the community rather than something that extracts value out of the community in the form of revenue generation, for the most part. But we are committed to developing sustainable funding sources and et cetera. Yeah, go ahead, Mayor. Sure.
No, so I was just to add on to that, I would say that there's a lot of things that we have in the works, right? And COVID has sort of slowed a lot of them down. But whenever we're thinking about putting cameras in where there's frequent dump sites, where do we put more trash cans? This project, we're always thinking about how are we going to maintain it, right? How do we keep it? How are we going to keep it clean? How are we going to keep doing that? So we're mindful of it, and even though we don't have the answers right now, but it's for pretty much everything we're doing. We are thinking about yeah, it's maintenance, right? And I say this pretty often in our department head meetings, but you're only as good as your day off, right? You're only as good as your day off. So we're trying to think about what the day off looks like or we make it the day off sort of thing. But no, that's a great question. So thank you.
All right. I know we're running over on time. There's been a lot of great questions that have come through. This format allows us to save all of the questions and continue to use them as we move forward. But so I think this is probably a good last question. The question is, how will decisions be made on what will be included in phase one? Will there be opportunities for the community to review proposals and vote on them?
Again, I'm going to say something that's not like PC, but a lot of these decisions are going to be administrative, right? We're not taking a poll on what programs are going to go into the building, what the building looks like. We're not polling that. And that might sound harsh, and I hope Vince can clean this up after I'm done. But at the same time, this is why we're having this meeting. We're going to have an outdoor meeting on site so that people can get a real sense of the property and what we're trying to do with it. But ultimately, decisions have to be made at the administrative level, because we also are the people that are looking for the funding as well. There's no just as there's like no such thing as a stupid question, there's no such thing as a stupid suggestion, right? So we want your input, but decisions do have to be made, and they're not going to be made by a poll or a vote or anything like that. So, but thank you for asking that, and because I think maybe that'll, other people are probably thinking the same thing. So, and just as the designers have said before, this is kind of an organic project. We want to build it so that there's some flexibility. We're not building it, these 5 programs are going in, and that's that. That's not happening. So we're very open to suggestions, but decisions will be made at the administrative level. Vince, do you want to?
Yeah, no, I mean,
here.
I think that's roughly right. We are going to continue to submit or to solicit community input. I mean, we want these ideas, and I think already tonight we've gotten a couple ideas that we hadn't actually thought about before that may well end up in the final project. I think the idea, this isn't the only or the last investment that the Keffer administration plans to make in Upper Darby. This is in some ways the first one, and so we may not get 100% of whatever. I guarantee you, we're not going to get 100% of what everybody wants into this project. But that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Maybe it happens at community center number 2 or at new library branch or whatever the future might hold. So I think people should be vocal. People should submit their ideas. People should be passionate about what they want to see at the center. And we will do our very best. I mean, as Joe said, I've been pushing them to add another story to the center for months. So if we can find the money for another story, that's that many more programs and that many more ideas that we can get into this one. And that's the kind of process that we're committed to. In terms of phase 1, I could be wrong about this, but phase 1, I think, is actually a construction term of art. It refers to demolition and site work. It's sort of it's a specific part of the construction as opposed to a specific part of the conceptual decision making, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the project's being conceived as a single phase. Like, it will all happen at once when it happens.
Right.
Pieces built. Mm-hmm.
The one other thing that I think Ed Brown asked about computer classes, and it made me realize we talked a lot about bringing green space and bringing environmental education and raising design standards. But one of the other things that the mayor's committed to seeing happen at the community center is internet connectivity. One way or another, all residents will have high-speed internet access at the community center. We've already started to talk to Comcast about that. Comcast has a program where they're wiring community centers around the country, and we certainly would love for Upper Darby to be considered in that program. But even if we're not successful with Comcast, one way or another, internet connectivity, high-speed internet access for the residents is definitely a part of the community center.
Are we doing a wrap? Are we doing a wrap up here? Because I think Allison Davis had said that we are still collecting all your comments and questions. We did want to keep the meeting to, you know, we could talk about this all night. We could be here, right? But we want to respect everybody's time. And again, this is a very preliminary stage in the building and the development of the community center. So I'm real happy. I can't see everybody that's on here. I can only see the panelists, but I see there's a lot of questions in the Q&A and the chat, and we're real open. We're very committed to making this happen. We're very committed to hearing everybody's opinion who feels like giving an opinion. And I think this has been pretty good. And we'll let you know, we're going to have an on-site meeting, you know, socially distanced, everybody wearing masks and all that stuff, and probably the next 2 or 3 weeks, I think, hopefully before the end of March. Allison, I don't know if you want to add to that, but
yeah, no, just thank you everyone for taking the time to be here and to watch and to care about this really important thing for the community. Obviously, we do have some people who we weren't able to answer all of your questions. We did try to get through questions, at least one per person who commented, but we do take this feedback really seriously. And so the BKP team has already asked that we share these, you know, we save all these comments and make sure that they get to them. Obviously, they're coming to the mayor and the administration. So thank you again so much for your time, and have a great evening. Unless there's anything.
Thank you all.
thank you. And thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.